Now the GoPro Hero 10 has been released, I've been looking at the footage, and the first thing I've noticed is that colour is still there, that GoPro colour. Hopefully that natural thing that they have on there is going to calm it down somewhat. I think they've got the message that a lot of us don't like that GoPro sort of hue that you can get on skin tones in particular. The first thing I noticed when I upgraded from the 5 to the 7 was the fact that my skin tones were slightly orange and almost like beautified in some way. I don't know what it was they did, but it didn't look right. The skin tone never really looked right, and it's nice to see, hopefully, with the 10, that the settings have a GoPro colour and a natural colour which will get rid of that horrible hue. Hopefully. I'm not convinced yet. I'm going to wait. I went from the 5 straight to the 7, and that was the first thing that I noticed. The other thing I've noticed that most people are using it on automatic, because you look at that shutter speed when they're in really sunny areas, and the movement is really jagged and jittery. It looks very GoPro like. I don't like that look at all. So what I'm doing at the moment is I am using the old GoPro 7 with its own internal microphone to make this video. I also have the 9 because I didn't like the skin tone on this one, the 7 at the first, when I first got it. I thought hopefully the 9 was going to improve that, and plus the fact that it had better stabilization. Well, it does have better stabilization, but I can't get round that color, and I also had so many other problems with it as well. For instance, I went out, the first time I went out, I went out for 10 minutes, and during that 10 minutes while making the video from the start, it locked 4 times. In actual fact, it locked 4 times and it turned itself off twice while recording as well. So from the start I had problems. It was doing all sorts of weird things. I'd start recording and start talking to the camera, and then it's not recorded, it's turned itself off. Another thing that happened, I'd talk to the camera and that the footage wasn't put onto the SD card. It hadn't been recorded onto the card. When I got home it was missing, and then I found out there was something going on there, changed the card, still happened. Then I had freezing issues, locking issues, and then finally what did it for me was the internal audio popping, because sometimes I do actually use the internal mic, because the internal mics are not that bad on these cameras. I'm using the internal mic now just to show that these microphones are pretty good. So with the 9, what happened was I used it I think for about 2 weeks, and after 2 weeks it went in the cupboard and it never really came out, because I went straight over to the Osmo Action. I felt I had a better skin tone, and on top of that it was more reliable. It never played up, it's never locked since I've had it, and I've had it from the start as well. And the thing is that that was a more reliable camera. Now I'd rather have a camera that's more reliable than one that's going to play up, although it's got all these gizmos and gadgets and it's got all the stabilization and all that going on. I'd rather have a more stable camera. So I decided to revisit the 7 before I totally give up on GoPro, and I'm going to do something that I've not done before. I'm going to wait for a year before I make any decision on the GoPro 10. So at the moment I'm using the final firmware update that came out for the 7, and that's proved to me that the 7 can be pretty reliable. I don't really get an awful lot of trouble with this one. I don't think it's playing up half as much as anything else I've had. Even the 5 sometimes locked up actually when I had that. So I've gone back to this 7 just to check out that color profile, and in fact I found it slightly better than the 9, but I'm hoping that the 10 with that natural color has nailed it. If it has, brilliant. If the 10 has lost all the problems of the 9, brilliant. But if I wait till the end of the year, first of all, the camera is going to come down in price because number 11 is going to be on its way, so it'll be cheaper. And not only that, it'll have its final firmware, which means it's probably at its most stable, as my 7 is now. If that's the case, and the 10 turns out to be it turns out to be one that, sorry about the plane, you're probably picking it up nicely. If it turns out to be a nice camera, and it turns out to not play up and not lock and have all these issues that the 9 had, then that's the time to buy the 10, just before or just after the 11 comes out. and then let the 11 do what it's going to do. I'm not happy with what happened with the 9, and I think, you know, really for the kind of money that you pay for a GoPro, the camera should be stable. The firmware should be stable, and it's never really been stabilized with the 9. There have been people with they say with no issues, but I have had nothing but lockups, freezing, non-recording, turning off, that funny sort of hue and colour. And that funny thing about that colour is it depends on the weather too and what the lighting's like. So I think for me the 9 was just never a good camera. Never could I rely on that one. The 7 is much more reliable, but then again it's got its last update 1.9, so I'm going to wait. It'll be cheaper, it'll have the last firmware update, so therefore it's going to be at its most stable, and I will have had a year to look at other people's videos to see if the camera is actually any good. Going to save money in the long run, I think. Hope to see you next time. Cheers for now.